What's the worst houseguest experience you've had? One of my best buddies from high school called me up and begged for me to come get him from a town about 3 hours away. The idea was he would stay with us for a couple weeks while he looked for work and then get his own place. 6 months later I ended up renting him a room for 1 month and dropping him off with his junk and wishing him well. His father had warned me he would drain me dry, and he wasn't kidding. All those months he was supposedly using my vehicle to look for work, he was instead going out to a local bar. Every bottle in our liquor cabinet was drained down to the last finger. My uncle and his wife came to stay for a while. They got my room and I slept on the couch for a few months. NBD when you're a kid, I guess. What actually ticked me off is that when they finally left we found out that they'd seriously messed up my room. Everything reeked of cigarettes, there were ground-up peanut shells in the carpet, cigarette burns on my mattress, etc. And we couldn't figure out why the room smelled like death until we lifted up the bed and found mummified cat shit stuck up in the shag carpeting. They either had such bad hygiene that they didn't notice the smell or they knew and they just didn't care. To everyone asking how we didn't notice the cigarette smell, my guess is that they only smoked in the room during the day when everyone was out, probably smoked out the window. My parents weren't smokers, we just figured the smell was coming from their bodies, which we couldn't do anything about. Housemate had people come over, order a pizza, decide they didn't want it and refuse to answer the door so they didn't have to pay, at 4 a.m. Pizza guy could hear them through the door so kept knocking louder and louder. I eventually went to the door and opened it, then explained to the pizza guy what was going on, so that they didn't blacklist the property, and forced them to pay. As they were packing to leave the next day I noticed them trying to take some of my extra PS4 controllers by sneaking them into their bag. I'm normally an introvert but already being cranky from no sleep I lost my shit at that point. Called them a disgusting thief and told them to GTFO. My dad owned a business his whole life and was in the process of hiring new installers. One applicant came in from out of town and my dad, being the kind man he was, offered for him to stay in our home. When the morning came the man went to take a shower. My parents heard the water turn on and it stayed on for a really long time. After an hour and a half of running water, my mom made my dad go check on him. My dad went upstairs, picked the lock on the bathroom door, and found blood and a limp body on the floor next to the running shower. The man had overdosed, lost consciousness, hit his head on the shower side, and died. He was dead, right there on the bathroom floor that I used for 10 years. One thing is for sure, he won't be coming back to our house again. My friend asked if her brother, who I'd never met, could crash on my couch for the night. Her boyfriend wouldn't let him stay with them. My roommate and I agreed, just for the night. Then the next night, he got in a fight with the person he was supposed to stay with, and had to crash on my couch again. Stuff like that kept happening. Then he just stopped trying to find somewhere else to stay and started taking our spare key, staying out till I went to bed, and then coming in and crashing on the couch. His phone was off so I could never reach him when he was out unless he was connected to Wi-Fi. He got a job at a tattoo parlor and would brag about how much money he made, but never contributed or saved the money to move out. He blew it all on weed. I seriously don't know how someone could spend that much on weed. He was there for almost 2 months before he lied and snuck in a girl he'd met in rehab who had felony arrest warrants out for her. I'd said I didn't want her in the apt, and I caught them sneaking out the next morning 5 minutes before my alarm was to go off. I got upset with him and said it was not okay to lie to me and hide things from me. He freaked out and made up a bunch of stuff that he told my roommate and my friend, his sister, said I called him a useless junkie, etc. I've had a lot of friends struggle with addiction. I'd never ever say something like that. After having my roommate scream at me over the lies the guy told, I was done. He wasn't allowed back. It was a good thing I made him leave. Turns out he was slipping back into old habits. The next person who let him stay with them got robbed. He's been in and out of jail. My friend asked if I could help put money on his commissary thing. I hope the guy eventually gets cleaned up, but it's not my mess. Not my experience, but my mom's. One of my dad's younger cousin moved into my parents' newly-wed house to stay with them until he finds some other arrangements for him. My dad's a pushover and mom's an introvert. He ended up making my parents move out of their bedroom to other room as he needed it for his studies. That Pa's uncle had his friends over every other weekend. Even though my older brother was born, he did not move out. And then my dad's younger brother died, which gave him another reason to stay with them. Dad was living a soulless life for a few months after that. Then after 4 years I was born, and boy oh boy the baby me was a crier. According to my brother, if my uncle was even within 10 feet of me, I would cry. If I heard his voice, I would cry. Then he finally left the house, and has never been in our lives again. I guess I'm a blessing. Oh, this is a pretty good one. So I had a really old, good friend call me and tell me they needed a place to stay for maybe a few days or a week when I lived in the Pacific Northwest. I of course said yes. Then she told me her girlfriend was coming too. Okay, great. They show up, and when they get to my porch she tells me her girlfriend has strep throat. At first I think, okay, whatever. But then I stop and think, isn't that highly contagious? But they are already here. So I just kind of start thinking to myself that I'll have to somehow keep them to my spare bedroom and sterilize the crap out of everything. But then I am just wondering why my friend didn't tell me in advance, or if they don't know how contagious it is. Like if my girlfriend had strep, I'd go get a hotel and not subject my friend to that. After about a day, my friend tells me via text she has to leave. Which at first I am relieved, but then she asks if her girlfriend can just stay at my place. I don't know her, I've never met her in my life. I tell her I have another couple that need to come stay with me, which was true, and that I am not comfortable housing someone I don't know who is sick. She says that is fine, but then when she comes to get her stuff she acts all pissed and says, well, see you sometime, maybe. And I don't hear from her for a long time after. Kinda fucked up she put me in that situation tbh. My GF was pregnant and we were taking a little vacation. We let 2 friends who are brothers use our house while we were gone on the condition that they maintained the yard and garden. First they borrowed the truck, which wasn't a big deal, but they immediately wrecked it, driving head-on into a garbage truck. Then our very best friend stopped by to borrow something and they told her to fuck off. They found some hidden cash, maybe $100, and stole it. They broke plates. We came home to find a pile of soaking wet towels and linens which had grown mold and they all had to be replaced. Believe it or not, they did make an attempt to mow the lawn but somehow broke the lawnmower and then never fixed it or mowed or watered anything, and many flowers were dead. I had been collecting exotic varieties of heliconia there on the big island of Hawaii and they were all dead. Some of those flowers were worth $80 or $100. So we come home from vacation and the boys have vanished without a trace and won't ever answer our calls again. We are 5 months pregnant with no vehicle and a trashed house. I think the worst part was that we really did think of them as friends, but then they ghosted us like that. Like we were disposable and our pregnancy and our lives didn't matter. I lived in a 2-unit house, and we were the back unit that connected to a shared garage. Garage was used for nothing other than laundry and storage, and a previous tenant had left a mattress in it that no one ever bothered to move. One day I, then 20F, go into the garage, and nearly jump out of my skin upon seeing some man sleeping on the mattress. I freak out and flee back to my unit just in time for 2 of my male housemates to come home. They go to confront the guy and come back to tell me that he was friends with our other male housemate, and said housemate told him that he could crash in the garage as he was in between leases for a few days, without bothering to inform the rest of us. Despite this dick move by my roommate, I offered to let the guy to sleep on my living room couch instead of some sketchy mattress in the crummy garage. A few days turned into a few weeks, months. I, the administrator of our utilities and rent payments, demanded that he chip in at this point. He agreed, but I was moving out soon because I finished a term early. The couch and Wi-Fi router were mine and I was leaving them behind to pick up at the end of the year as a favor to my housemates. He shorted me a few $100s, a large sum to a broke college kid, after I left. Another housemate ended up having to pay for this guest because I was about to go reclaim my couch and router if I didn't get my money. A year later, the guest had the audacity to text me to ask if he could take me out the next time I came into town. Yuck.